and I will turn it over to our wonderful panelists for some introductions.
Great, thank you. I can go first if that's okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and it's great to see everyone. I guess we'll start by introducing ourselves, and so I'll pass it to one of you panelists once I'm done. My name is Henry Wu. I am a recent high school graduate, and I'm taking a gap year this year before starting at Harvard in the fall. Um, I am a GIV alumnus of the Math, Astronomy, and Current Issues and Youth Activism Institutes. So I've done a lot, and I've really enjoyed my time at GIV. Um, I'm a musician as well. I play the piano and the cello, and the intersection of math and music is something I think about a lot. So I'm really excited to be part of this panel and excited to share my thoughts on how I can use both of those in my life and how you can make both of those a part of your life too. I will pass it to Nathan.
Hi, I'm Nathan. As you can see by our last names, I'm Henry's twin brother, and so I'm also a recent high school graduate, but I'm not taking a gap year. I'm in my first year at Yale right now. So, and I'm thinking about studying biology, but I'm still trying to figure that out. And I've did GIV, the Math Institute, and also the ITDM Institute. So I'm excited to be back here with GIV speaking. And yeah, I'm also a musician. I play the violin, and I've continued doing that at Yale also, and it's been really, really fun. I'll pass it on to Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. I am Stephanie Joseph. I'm a junior computer science major at the University of Texas at Dallas. And for GIV, I have only ever done the Math Institute, but it's been for the past 5 years. And I have little to no, well, I have a little bit of musical background, but it's mainly math. And I'm excited to talk about how there is no such thing as a math person, and that just dispelling all the stereotypes that come around math. And then focusing on music, I'm going to pass it to Myra.
Hi, I'm Myra. Thanks for the segue, Stephanie. That was really great. um, I'm a musician predominantly, and also a journalist as of recent for Vermont Public Radio, and also a songwriting teacher for Governor's Institute of the Arts, so GIA in particular. And I actually am here to embrace the math that is kind of haphazardly within music, and comes by way of making a career out of music as well. So I'm excited to dispel all the rumors that come with that.
Okay, so let's hop right into it. I know Stephanie, you mentioned wanting to dispel some myths. I think that's a very good place to start. So take it away, y'all.
I guess we can start with, I'm sure everyone's heard before, I'm not a math person, or like math just doesn't come naturally to me, or everyone I'm sure has heard some version of this in their life at some point. And something that I know me, Henry, and Nathan have definitely gone through in like math competitions or just math in high school is that math is not just memorizing numbers and like calculating equations as fast as you can. Like, we are in the 21st century. We have calculators and computers that do this for us. Like, that's not why we go into the mathematics world. The main reason someone goes into the mathematics world is because they love the creativity side of it and the problem solving and the analyzing. And Henry and Nathan have done a lot more math competitions than me, so I'm sure they can go further into this. But what people are looking for once you like enter the real world and like leave college, and I'm seeing it a lot now with my interviews for jobs, is they don't care if you get the right answer, if you do the calculations wrong. What they care about is your thought process and how you go about solving the problem. And most of the times they're giving you problems that are unsolvable. So that's where it ties a lot into the music world of it, is because music is has just as much problem solving and trying to find the right words and trying to find the right rhythm and flow for your song. So now I'll give it to Henry and Nathan and Myra.
I can expand a bit on Stephanie's words. She's completely right about like math being so much more than strict rules that there's only one right answer. And I guess we'll talk a bit about competition math experience. So competition math is your, I think it's an important thing to talk about because it's not something that like every single student does in high school. It's like a bit out of the ways of your traditional math class. And I think like the problems you see in competition math, let's just make it clear, they aren't the calculations that you'll be doing in real life. But what you really get from it is this way of problem solving, this creative goal, this creative way of exploring problems. And it's so satisfying to like see a question, not know what to do, try things out, try different solutions that these are things that you don't know are going to work at first. It's all a bit of guesswork, and it's not solidly I do this and I get the answer. So that's something that I've really picked up throughout high school with competition math, and it's something that's helped me see how much creativity and looseness there is to math as a whole. So it's really a way of problem solving, I guess. And to expand on Stephanie's point about music being more rigid than people think it is, it's so many people see music as, oh, this is just where I can do whatever I want. But I'm like, it's something that I've been trying to like learn more about recently. I'm taking a music theory class this semester, and I'm learning so much about it. There's so many small nuances that you need to find, I guess. So many rules, not rules, not hard and fast rules, but there's so much more structure and so much more reasoning to why certain things sound the way they do. And it's not, you can't just throw any two things together and have it sound perfect.
Just to add on to Nathan, I think that I'd make a huge plug for doing competition math. If you're in school, even if you don't think you'll do well, it's still going to be very helpful because the things you learn in class are probably not going to teach you as much about being creative with your problem solving as competition math will, because with school you have a certain curriculum and you need to learn these certain steps and these certain algorithms almost, and that's good in a sense. It'll teach you about math, it'll teach you how to follow those steps, but it's not necessarily going to teach you how to generalize and know what to do if you've come across a problem where the steps aren't well defined. When you, I mean, I'm assuming when you go into math as a profession, you're trying to make new discoveries about the field or about whatever field you're doing. I guess this can apply to any kind of science or any kind of research. So in that, you might not have a well-defined set of rules. You're like at the forefront of whatever field, hopefully, and you need to come up with what to do. Hopefully, you're building upon the work of others, but it is really important to be able to think creatively and pull from, I guess, all aspects of your life to make a decision about what to do and what to try. So I think putting experimentation into math is really, really important. I would also add that about rigidity in music. Nathan and I are classical musicians, sort of by training, and I think classical music is, in my opinion, one of the most rigid ways you can do music compared to like songwriting, because usually you're reading from a page that has markings on it, notes, dynamics, speed or tempo, and usually you need to play the notes that are written, but there is some a level of interpretation for you to put in, like phrasing, sometimes dynamics, and it's up to you to tell a story through that, because ultimately music is about storytelling. So you need to strike a balance between following what's on the page and making it your own performance. And I will turn it over to Myra in a second because she can talk more about songwriting, which I'm sure is like more freeform, but also has a lot of structure to it too.
Thank you, Henry. You are all so amazing. I'm somebody that's always been like really self-proclaimed. I'm horrible at math. And I now like, I feel like I've learned so much just by listening to you about just that phrase and what that like brings up. And so maybe I'm not horrible at math, actually. Maybe I'm quite good at math, but in more of a circuitous way than I ever thought I could be. I'm actually classically trained. I started classical piano at age 4 and then made the switch to a singer-songwriter. I got signed to my first record label at age 16. And my record label was really interested in making me this like, well, I don't know, what do they do with most light-skinned Black women in the music industry? Just make us super sexy and beautiful and, you know, pop stars and do all these things. And so I had to fight. I had to really fight to say, I have something to say. I'm going to write something and you're going to buy it. And so that, when we're talking about problem solving and puzzle solving, that was really my first puzzle. I had quite a bit to learn, and the classical music industry can live in a space of right and wrong. You know, this is the correct way to do it with creativity involved, but this is also the wrong way to do it if you were to abandon all of these things and just like go rogue, go off on your own to the wild, wild west of making up your own chord patterns. So I had to fight a lot of like my own confidence and, you know, just trying to figure out what was my voice in the music world. And there was a lot of math involved in that. But as far as dispelling myths, you know, while everyone who has spoken previously is talking about creativity that's involved in math, I would also say there's a lot of rigidity, necessary rigidity and structure involved in music. And when I teach songwriting, this is a little bit of a repeat for those of you where we had our group meeting before, but you know, a lot of math teachers are trying to figure out how to add creativity to their teaching so that you can kind of sneak in math with the cake, sneak in the vegetables with the cake. And in music, I'm always trying to do the opposite. It's like, you know, there's quite a bit of structure that needs to be formed within you to develop an artistic practice for songwriting or music creation as well, and problem solving and puzzle solving. And that's before you start making money at it. And then when you start making money at it, that adds a whole other level and layer of, you know, math and money. And so I feel like the rumor and the myth that is the hardest for me to kind of take, well, there are really two. One is that, you know, musicians are busy all day just like floating around singing. Like I get to sing for like 2% of my time in my job. The rest is busy with marketing and money and booking and navigating uncharted, you know, territories and problem solving in a big way. And the other is that musicians who are talented are just being like struck by this bolt of lightning or like God to make us like talented, you know, that like it's just coming from the sky and you're having a good day or a bad day with it, but like you're going to just feel really compelled to engage with your talent based on the mood of the day. And that really isn't cool with me because you know, it kind of allies like the hard work and the talent that I've created or that we've created as musicians with like mental health instead of the hard work and artistic practice and process and dedication that it's taken to make music happen. And so when I teach songwriting, it's also to say, please do not rely on that special feeling that will come out of the sky. Please try to develop a structure that you can stick to, you know, and believe in and trust, and a toolbox so that you can call upon music whenever you like. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here with everyone.
Everything that Myra just said about how you need to build that toolbox to have, and then you can use that creativity. And then once you have that toolbox, you can go off and do whatever in the songwriting world you want to do. Is just like the whole premise of math. Grades K through 12, you are
I think
Yeah,
Stephanie has
I think
frozen for me. I'm not sure if that is true for
you've
everyone
ever
else.
seen. But now when I'm here in college and I'm taking these courses, 90% of my courses, when they label it a math course, there's no math. It's just you're doing something. For me, it's coding because I'm a computer scientist. For me, I have to write my code. And then the math part of it is me. Oh, I'm sorry if I just cut out. I don't know what happened. Um, for me, they're going to be like, prove why your code is going to be faster than everyone else's in the class. So I have this toolbox of all this math that I've learned, and I have this toolbox of how I wrote my code and why I wrote it. And then I have to put those together because I don't know that mine is the fastest out of everyone's in the class, but I have to find a creative way to show using all the things from my toolbox that mine is actually going to run in the fastest runtime. And then once you've proved it and everything, then the computer just does the rest and it'll run it and it'll tell you. But that's what all these classes are for, is like you're just using your toolbox, and then you from that toolbox need to find a creative way to prove to whoever it is why they shouldn't pick you, basically, for their company, for the internship right now for me, or even for the class to get a good grade. So I think that they overlap so much in that sense.
a bit of a tangent. I have a this is like a kind of a question for my own personal wishes also. But I like this past semester I joined an a cappella group. This is like something that's like been new to me. I normally don't consider myself a singer, but like one of the things that I've had to do is I've um been on the arranging team. So I've had to like find songs and make arrangements of them. And this is kind of a question for Myra, but like kind of for my own enlightenment. Like, I'm just wondering, like, what is the process that you kind of go through? Um, and to tie it back to the theme, like, what structures do you try and apply? Like, what methodologies do you use to come up with a new song when you're writing a song or um, trying to arrange something?
Awesome question. Um, I think my first response would be to say I respect however anyone really approaches this. So everybody has a very different pathway towards songwriting. I like to talk a lot about how music functions, not just how it feels. So how does music function for you? Is it something that you dance to, exercise to? Is it something that for me, I love lyrics. So I'm a writer first. I love to just see the lyrics. So I tend to teach what I call like, bottom up. Like I like to teach lyrics first and then upwards from there. But I remember a producer of mine once said, Myra, stop cramming all these lyrics down my throat. Like, don't you understand? There's an entire generation of people that just go to raves and just hear this like bum, 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 like, and they just feel it and they lose their minds. Like you have to write for them too. So learning about how music functions is so important to understanding your own process. For me, because it's lyrics first, I like a good piece of writing. So when I teach, I like to be like, uh, we need to tell a story. Who are your characters? What are they doing? Give us the context. And then, what is the chorus? The chorus for me is like the point of your song. If I were to take away the rest of your song and just read your chorus, would it tell me everything I needed to know lyrically? The bridge is a point of opposition. So there's this whole like creative writing aspect to just the lyrics in general that can take months to really get satisfied with. And then to apply melody is a little tricky. It is a little bit of like, hand of God, a little bit of like, the definition of the word melody is a sequence of notes that is pleasing to the ear. So it's just so subjective, like what pleases your ear might not please mine, and that's okay. But then, we are all of an era or a generation or a time of perfectionism, and wanting to really be like, yeah, but what is the right way? And so that initial trust in self to say, like, what it is I hear is good, that's the thing that you can't teach folks. You kind of have to, really count on them to really do that. And I always say that perfect is the enemy of done. So if you just spend all this time like strangling your melodies to death, then you'll never be able to decide that you just really like it, and then say you do. From there, once you come upon a melody, you need to decide, is it your melody or is that actually the guitar that's supposed to be singing that? And go from there, and apply instruments. And I think instruments are fantastic to not play yourself. I also, I play instruments, but I think it's really great to hire other people who play them better. And then you just have to, after you've created this large thing you're quite proud of, just remove ego from it, and go forward with what is better for the song, what is best for the song. Because at a certain point in songwriting, you have an audience you have to consider, and there's a responsibility to them, the times, the stenographer that you've become for the times, what you've written down, and how it's going to play out publicly. And that adds a whole other layer. So I hope that wasn't too much of a rant, but I wanted to answer your question thoroughly.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll just add my own thoughts on when I make music. Like, obviously, I'm not a songwriter, but some of the thoughts that I have when I perform something are pretty similar to that, actually, in terms of like thinking about what I want to do to communicate my message to the audience. And this is like something that's relating to like bridging the gap between your like analytical self and your, I guess let's say, creative or spontaneous self. Um, and it's something that I think is really important to view the world in like sort of both of those dimensions. Or I mean, you could argue that there's like more than just those two dimensions to view society or to view the world. But I'll just start with like my music making process. Like I said earlier, I think music is about storytelling, and whether it's like a piece of classical music or something with lyrics, that's like it might be more tangible to know what your music is about. Your goal is to communicate a message to your audience. And there are a lot of technical considerations for me that go into how to communicate that message best. And it's something that I get better with practice, like deciding how loud to play in this one part, or like, do I want to make this dynamic contrast here? Or how fast do I want to play the piece? Or should I speed up or slow down in this certain part? Those are things that are like more technical part of my craft as a classical musician, but those things are translated into what people hear, and that affects what they feel. And I know Myra said you should think about how music functions, not just how it feels. But I think for me, like, I'm outwardly not a very emotional person, but I care a lot about human emotions and human stories. And that's something I want to explore in my work, whether it's in music or outside of music. So, yeah, I think it's important to recognize that a lot of technical choices that you make that take years of training, um, they need to translate into things that affect real people and affect emotions. So that's something that I care a lot about.
And I see Brandon asked a question. Um, Sometimes when you make music, it's best to get ideas out and written down, even if it's not perfect, and move on to a section. And is this something that comes back into play with math also? And this, yes, 100%. Um, when you're like, I feel that like once you get past the stage of um, like a math question, that there's a set procedure for how you do it. Um, like with algebra 1, you just move the variables to one side, divide everything over, and then you have your answer. Like once you get to the point where the path to your answer is nebulous and not clear, then you're constantly trying things for like a few minutes, stopping them and trying to come back to it like an hour later. Oftentimes, um, this is like, so I think perhaps the best example of this, local example, is probably my experience with the like UVM talent search. I'm not sure if people are familiar with that, but basically it's like a kind of challenge where you're given like 6 or so problems to do over the course of like a month maybe. And that happens with the expectation that you don't just sit down and bang it out in one sitting. You're like thinking about them like during car rides, as you like try and fall asleep. So it's definitely something that you don't just sit down and solve immediately. And there again, we have like all the creativity that comes into play, where you need to think about a solution, and often there's multiple solutions. There's usually more than one solution that you need to find. So that's just one thing. Yeah.
Going off of that for Brandon's question, that was a great example. And the fact that when he says like there's multiple ways to one answer, like the core of math is like, I'm sure everyone here has heard like PEMDAS with multiplication, addition, division, and subtraction. But subtraction and division, and then multiplication and addition, they're the same, but just two different ways to go about it. Like if you never wanted to multiply in your entire life, you can just add things together always. Like that's a possibility. So that is the basis of what you're taught in like third grade, right? And there's already two different ways to go about it. And you can use them in any different combination you want. So the thing about it not being perfect and like it could possibly be wrong, so like move on and come back to it. I had never really understood that because like in K through 12, you're taught a right way and a wrong way to do things. So I came to school and my first class was just a proofs class, and I would sit down with the homework and I wouldn't want to write it down until I had that whole proof in my head from like beginning to end and everything made sense. Like, and then once I had that, I would write it down and I would realize I wouldn't be, I would be spending like days on a homework that should have only taken 1 or 2 hours. I was like, what is wrong with me? And now, junior year, when you see me doing proofs, I will have like columns after columns of just like scratched out work and just working through it. And then eventually I'll get an answer and it'll be completely different than the person next to me. But in the end, math is just like you start with something and then you want to get to a final solution and you can go about it any way you want. So I think that's pretty cool.
I emphasize, oh, sorry, Ross. Just one quick thing. I'd emphasize the idea that right and wrong answers are like, it's not really how it works in real life. Like in school, a lot of things, not just math, also like science and even maybe like language arts, you learn there's like one answer to something, or there's like, you have to do it exactly this way. And in the real world, you're usually not answering questions that have one answer. You're making a claim about something in your life. Like that could apply to a variety of fields. But I think it's good to learn, like when you're still young, as a student, try to think about answering open-ended questions and being okay with the answer being a little bit messy, because the real world is messy. So I think that's a good thing to think about.
Got another question in the chat. Oh, but I don't want to cut you off, Myra.
No, I was gonna just address the
I will read it. Nathan was a little too quick for me last time. Got it in there before I could read it out, but I will go for it this time. Laura asks, mathematicians try to make new discoveries in their field. Can that apply to music? And what are some examples of a discovery a musician might make about music?
Yeah, well, I love this question. I feel like a lot of the things that are in place that we can count on about music, such as like the word genre, for instance, are actually implemented by the music industry in order to sell music. So these kinds of things are not actually helpful as musicians when you're creating. And so to feel in maybe, I don't know if it feels this way in math, but I can only maybe imagine that it does, to feel like there's some sort of permission, maybe you have to give yourself or someone else gives you, to defy the structures that are in place. Like you are all speaking so much about the creativity involved in math. Like it makes me wonder if I felt like I had the permission to be a little bit more creative with math, would I have felt that I'd been good at it, you know? But, you know, a lot of songwriting structure, for instance, is like, you know, verse 1 or intro, verse 1, pre-chorus, chorus, verse 2, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus, out. And 3 minutes and 20 seconds is the standard for a hit song. And there's all of these things that are just kind of designed to sell music, but will also keep you fearful of going outside of those structures. And then when you see people like Pink Floyd have like an 8-minute long song that's just a guitar solo where they say 2 words over and over, you're like, how do I get there? How do I actually respect that in a way that could like give me a career? You know, they're just doing that because they're Pink Floyd. So how do I apply that to me? And I think there's a lot of like breaking down of weird barriers where capitalism has influenced music, and that's one way you can find a discovery. Tierra Whack, has anybody ever listened to Tierra Whack? She's awesome. She released a 15-minute video of about 10-second songs to create one 15-minute video. And each one, she's a totally different character. So for me, she implemented like musical theater in that. She basically said, you know, screw you to the music industry, and was just like, I don't care if this sells or not, because who can buy a 15-minute video of 10 individual or 10-second songs individually created and mashed up? Like nobody can. It's not even really for sale. It was just a statement. So I think there's a lot of discovery surrounding a breaking of patterns that have been in place for musicians to be sold for way less than they're worth. And it seems to be a good time, since the 90s was the last like expensive time in music, or last time that there was any money in the music industry, and everybody's bankrupt now, and COVID has kind of leveled the playing field. And that's really, really fun, actually, like as a musician, to not have to consider money all the time. I think it's a really good time to try out what speaks to you first, what you want to create first. Do I want to, you know, write a song about my fuzzy fanny pack and just put it on YouTube? Like, I have the ability now. Isn't that fantastic? I might not make as much money as was perceived previously, but it wasn't really made. There were like always managers and all of these people involved that were taking 20% here or there anyway. So it's a strange time, but a really good time for a fuzzy fanny pack song. So I'm just gonna say that.
I'm looking forward to the new single, Myra.
Yes.
Sorry. I want to address maybe the flip side of what Myra said, like from a math perspective. There's a debate about whether math is invented or discovered, like by humans. And I don't know, like I can't really like go into that, but it's kind of interesting to think about, because a lot of science is coming up with theories to explain the world with as much accuracy as possible. And like Newtonian mechanics, for example, the theory of gravity works pretty well, for example, for like pretty large objects, but it breaks down at very small scales. And that's why we have quantum mechanics to try to explain that. But in the end, your theories may not be perfect. Like they can only get really close potentially. And when I think about math, there are people who had to invent, per se, like the Cartesian plane. Like I think Descartes was inspired by seeing like a fly crawl across tiles on his wall or something, and he thought about the Cartesian plane, like the coordinate grid. And if you do algebra, or if you've ever done algebra, you can probably think about like that is like a really indispensable aspect of math, because it's like representing two variables and their relationship in like a graphical way, which is really, really helpful, obviously. But to think about that as recent as like, I don't know, 500 years ago, that didn't really exist might be kind of surprising. When you think about music, I think it's easier to think about music as being created or invented than it is about math. Like, because it's really the act of creating. But with math, I think it can be said that you create math too. If you're at the forefront of the field, you're coming up with new ways to represent math or the world around you. Like there's like more than one type of geometry. For example, Euclidean geometry, like existing on a two-dimensional plane, is the one that most people know about. But there's also hyperbolic geometry or spherical geometry. So and those are things that you can think of as being invented, but I don't know, maybe they're just discovered and all math is waiting for us to be discovered. That's another way to think about it, which it really just depends on your perspective.
Yeah, any other questions from folks?
One thing I guess we could talk about is that I wanted to maybe bring up is I guess the rigidity of like musical practice. Like Henry touched on this briefly actually when he was talking a bit about I forget exactly what you were talking about, but I remember it being related to me wanting to talk about this. But basically, like practice isn't something where you can just go in and do whatever you want and have it sound good. It's tiring and boring sometimes, and I think this is a key part of like musical training and like trying to be excellent at music that a layman may not be fully aware of. I like it's even more than just doing the same thing over and over again. It's creating a plan for like the music that you want. Like having ideas of what you want to convey. There's this like one of the things that I've thought about quite a bit is like if you're a musician, like who's responsible for the interpretation that how others interpret it? Like is there a correct interpretation in that like the way you're playing the music? So I guess as performers we all have our own intended messages that we want to convey, but then there's a question like are other interpretations incorrect? And it's a bit of a catch-22 because like as a listener you want to say that whatever your interpretation that you're hearing, it's like, oh yeah, that's good, and people should feel free to interpret things however they want. But as a performer you have a very specific vision in mind, and I know that like I feel bad if I guess like I'm not conveying the message that I want to be conveying. So there's a delicate balance there in between like, am I conveying the right thing? Is this like, sure, people think I'm playing well, but am I truly playing? Are they getting what I want them to get from it? So that's a bit of a side tangent question, I guess. But really, it's related to the idea that like you want to always strive for a very specific vision that's quite rigid in some cases. But then again, you're also always like exploring different ways to hear things. So there's a bit of flexibility there.
We've got a question in the chat from Zoe who asks, does anyone know any cool examples of people who have intentionally combined math and music in research, performance, etc.?
There's just so much math and music that's like hard to I feel like everybody has like if you have rhythm or tempo at all, then it shows up there. But I don't know anybody who's like put it on spotlight as like on brand as like part of a spotlight. I don't know if any of the other panelists know of anyone.
One thing I can think of is just the genre of math rock. I don't know too much about the genre, but to me it sounds like you're putting a lot of math into like rhythms and I guess the rhythms that go into the music. I honestly don't know too much about the genre, but I know it exists. So
Yeah, of course, Tristan. Tristan is saying they have an example.
Yeah, so I love learning new things, including music theory. And recently I learned about a song which not many people know about. It's by Wendy Carlos, and I found it really interesting because it really just kind of combined those concepts of math and music, because the song was literally created to explore these new musical scales that the artist created. What she did was she made some musical systems that kind of ditched the octave in favor of other intervals of music, like the perfect fifth, fourth, and third. She created the spacing in between the notes to be smaller than a half step, so the spacing between the intervals would sound more nicer than they have in our 12-note system we have now. And the purpose of the song was just to explore and hear how it sounded, and I thought that was a good example of basically exploring new horizons using music theory.
To add on to that, I think that's a great example of like, I guess microtones, like the idea that maybe it's not like the 12-tone system that's common in Western music is, I mean, I would dare say like it's constructed. Like there's no reason there have to be 12 tones. In other parts of the world, there are other tuning systems, for example, or other scale patterns like the pentatonic scale and other things. And I know that in classical music, there's quite a few composers who use microtones, like more modern composers. And I think like other musicians like Jacob Collier, they sometimes sing in like microtones. And it's just a really cool way to break the boundaries of what is like typical within music.
Got Brandon talking about math rock in the chat as well as Laura referenced The Jazz of Physics, The Secret Link Between Music and the Structure of the Universe, which is a book by Stephen Alexander, which sounds very cool. The only thing I could come up with, which is a little lower brow, was the They Might Be Giants album, Here Come the 1, 2, 3s, where they sing about math. That's a very literal connection, but I think there are a lot of really cool examples. Thank you everyone who has shared them and everyone speaking on them. One thing I'd be interested to get into, and again, everyone feel free to put stuff in the chat to direct the tail end of our conversation here. But we've talked a lot about the creativity and structure and rigidity in both math and music, and it has been a lot of conceptual stuff. I'd love to kind of bring it back down to a smaller scale and kind of talk about personal experiences with these sorts of things. Like Henry and Nathan, you mentioned math competitions. Myra, you've been talking about these recording sessions. Stephanie, you were talking about like your classes and having to write the fastest code, those sorts of things. I'd love to hear more of those sorts of little stories if people have any to share. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but.
Ross, I just wanted to ask, like, what specifically would you like us to chat about with our individual stories? Sorry.
I guess just in reference to those times where you have felt like, you know, math is especially creative or music is especially structured, like those sorts of intersections. Sorry for not being quite as clear as I should have.
I guess I have an example.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm left-handed, and so when my band teacher started teaching me how to play the drums, I'm kind of stubborn, so I like using my left hand, and I started researching different ways of holding the sticks while drumming to that kind of promote the left hand more than the right hand. Like normally you would like play the hi-hat with your right hand and cross your arm over to play your left hand on the snare drum. And I was like, if I want to use my left hand more, shouldn't I do it the other way? And learn about this style of drumming called open-handed drumming, which lets you just like spread your arms out and kind of play with whichever way. And I guess that is kind of more the music doesn't have to be structured. Like you don't have to play the hi-hat with your right hand. You can switch it around whichever way you think works best because it sounds better. That was kind of the thing I had. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. We do have a couple of questions coming in the chat if we're still mulling over those experiences. Zoe was asking, do you think an AI could ever make music that would sound good to people in the same way?
I think so. So like I guess one thing that I think AI has well, Stephanie probably has more experience talking about this, but I feel like AI's power isn't yet isn't completely realized so yet. Yeah, there are restrictions, but like I feel like um, there's already so many things that AI can do to be imperceptibly different from humans. And like even if it's not like exactly the same, I think um, to say that like like the standard like sound good to people in the same way is a very reachable bar. Um, and I'll actually shut up and let Stephanie talk a bit about it if she has stuff to say.
I was just Googling to try and find it because I remember hearing, and I think it was in some class, that like the beats, because you know how like in the rap genre, a lot of you'll hear a lot that like the beats are sampled over and over again by different people, but it just starts with like one sample. And it was some percentage, it was like 30% or something of beats that rappers are using in their songs right now, even though it's not the final song, of course. But just the beats that they are using are actually produced by AI to get a like unique sample that's hasn't been used before, except like still flows with the same like genre, I guess. So I think it's already being used, but I would definitely suggest Googling more into it if you are um, more interested. And then for the question that is there any music that the panelists prefer to listen to while doing math/coding? Me personally, I don't know why. Maybe Myra has an explanation for this, but I can't listen to songs that have like words in it basically. So I will do, because I'll end up typing that word if I'm listening to it and I hear the word and I'm like, oh, whatever. So I'll either listen to lo-fi, I don't know if you've heard of those, or I'll just listen to instrumental music.
Yeah, I think that my uncle is somebody that is a self-proclaimed tinkerer. It's like what he calls himself, and he's always taking cars apart or like taking all these things apart. He'll buy something at like Goodwill and spend months taking it apart, and it's like so much fun for him. And I'm like, why are you doing this? This is crazy. And he's like, I've just, since I was a little kid, I've always wanted to know what the insides of things looked like and how to take them apart and put them back together. And I think music is one of those things that like, if you know how it is taken apart and put back together and the choices, like if you start to understand the choices that people have made, you know, this is why the guitar did this or why it bent to this note or any of these things, then you can never like unsee it. And so it's really hard to let music just wash over you in the same way that music appreciators do. I actually like long for those days. I can't even go to a concert anymore. People want to go to concerts in like large groups and like enjoy music in this massive way where they're just, you know, sitting and letting it wash over them. And I can't. I'm just sitting there not being social. I just want to understand what it's about. So 100%, if I'm getting a massage or anything like that, please turn the music off. If I'm doing yoga, please turn the music off. I cannot meditate. I cannot zone out. I cannot do any of these things because I'm too interested in picking this apart from the inside out and trying to figure out the choices that were involved. And so, yeah, once you have a mathematical approach to music, it's really hard to, it's really hard to undo it.
Shane in the chat says that he relates to that heavily, but for film. Shane, do you want to say more on that? I again don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you would like to.
Oh no, I was just I'd basically just be regurgitating what Myra just said, but for film. It's just like, yeah, you start to pick it apart. I don't have that same relationship with music, but that whole idea where it's like you start to, I don't know, you appreciate it in a different way. And I like to relate it to knowing how a magic trick is done. Like you it's like, the magic, quote unquote, is it's gone, but you start appreciating it a different way from like a craft perspective, you know. And I have other friends who are much more engaged in music, and like they listen to different kinds of music than me for different reasons. Like I have a friend who often listens to very like sort of intricately constructed music and stuff like that. And it's like I like it too, but I could tell that he sees like as something sort of completely different, like all these like layers and stuff behind it. It's something I want to start learning myself. Like I've always sort of felt and thought very musically, but I don't understand anything a whole lot from like a craft perspective. But it's something that it's kind of the reason why I joined this, is because I'm interested to hear more about sort of the inner workings, and something I've always thought about, like why do we resonate with music in the first place? Is there some sort of like little, well, I don't know, metronome in our head like that or whatever, going on that like makes us connect with it? Because it's like it's one of those things where it's like you don't quite know why you know it affects us, but it does. And it's like one of those questions I've always thought about. So
Ross, if I could jump in about AI and music. So I
Of
think
course.
the answer to that question was definitely yes and no. I think yes, because a lot of popular music already incorporates like a lot of AI already, and people enjoy listening to that. But if you went to, I don't know, a piano recital and you watched a robot play the piano, like the robot doesn't have emotions like a human does to put into the music. So I think it'd definitely be very different, but the robot might still be able to invoke emotions in the audience, which is weird, I think.
I love Britney Spears, but really all you have to do is listen to that production to understand that like AI took control a really long time ago and nobody noticed. So I'm just gonna say that. Music studios used to be these places where I'd walk in and just be like dumbfounded by all the vintage instruments and the real instruments. And now you walk in and it's literally a desktop, full stop, the end. And algorithms make us buy stuff. Why wouldn't they make us enjoy stuff? Like, I definitely think it's been there for a while.
So I know we're getting close to our end time at 3. I don't want to cut off the conversation, but I know that people may have some like places that they need to be and everything. So I would invite anybody who's got to go. Thank you so much for being here, and it has been a pleasure talking to you. Anyone that wants to stick around and keep talking, I welcome that as well.
I have to go teach 7 music lessons, so I'm gonna go.
Thank you so much for joining us, Myra.
It's so great to be here with everyone. Thank you so much, and you're all just, yeah, I'm just so honored to be a part of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Myra.
Okay, so Shane, you had mentioned having something that you wanted to add about the AI conversation, which is fascinating for me. I'm having a great time.
oh yeah, I had a similar conversation like this a while ago with one of my friends. We were talking about the nature of art in general, but we started talking about like the relationship between, well, like the difference between art and craft, and it's like we were kind of debating what the true nature of art was, and like what it really meant, which is something that everybody talks about. But like it's basically, in my mind, I've started to develop like this idea that like maybe art has intentions behind it, and then craft is the technical you know mechanisms that you use to communicate those intentions. And things like music theory and stuff, I guess, in a way, is those technical mechanisms, that craft. And it's like if an AI generated something based upon like music theory and stuff like that, it would be pure craft, but would it really be art in like a musical sense? Because it's just like, I guess we were sort of thinking about like, you know, art is designed to elicit some sort of response like that has meaning of some sort. And if a AI generated something, then it would just be, it wouldn't have that same like depth, the intention, the meaning. And it's like, you know, maybe it, I mean, it would, people would still like resonate with it. It's just like maybe it's a slightly different conversation about like whether it's like art or not. But then again, it's like, you know, it's not quite what we're talking about here, but I don't know. It's an interesting conversation because like people would still respond to it, could respond to it in like, you know, a meaningful way. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't really have an end here. It's just sort of like a door I'm opening up. Curious to see what people think of that.
We appreciate philosophical tangents here. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Nathan.
Yeah. So I think my opinion is like maybe a tad controversial slash like not the most popular one. But I think the question like the distinction that you're making, I think a lot of people tend to make between craft and art is like whether something is done by humans. But like one of the questions, so I'm like a prospective bio major, so and I've been like quite interested in like evolutionary biology. So one of the things that you need to ask yourself is like what's so special about humans? And I'm kind of the opinion that like humans aren't as special as we think we are. In that um like there are ways to mimic evolution with computers through like evolutionary algorithms, just as an example. And I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that you can evolve something to be exactly as we are, just like in such a way that we like you can sit there knowing that, oh, this isn't a real human, but all evidence points like this is a human. And I think by that point the distinction between like art and craft and like human and non-human is trivial, and you just um, I feel like it's somewhat hand wavy to say that um, with like with this human made definition slash like intention behind it. um, I guess what I'm saying is it's impossible to evaluate the amount of intention behind a robot where in truth they could be like made from the same conscious not conscious, but like same atoms, bits and pieces that we are. I don't know if that makes sense. But
I know like Brandon and Zoe have added some things in the chat that I think speak to that. And I don't intend to put you on the spot, but I can read those things out. Brandon said that one thing he wanted to add really quick was that his experience producing music on the topic of robots playing them is that it varies with the equipment you're using, but you can often program that type of emotion into the music that you make. He doesn't play any string instruments in his music, but he can go through his computer to have them sort of have a degree of nuance.
Hello.
That
My mic wasn't working. I couldn't do it, but I was going to say
Okay.
I could read it, but at this point you're almost done. If you'd want to just finish it up, go ahead.
Okay. Where was I? The amount of control you can give to the sound depends highly on the limitations of the plugin and sound library that you use, and also on your skill, which is very much, he makes the comparison to an actual musician. Again, on your point, Nathan, of what human versus machine, like where are those lines? Do they matter for arts and crafts? But yeah, we have some more stuff in the chat, but I want to let us embrace some of this little chaos at the end, and people can unmute and say their thing, and we're hanging out. So
I responded to Brandon in the chat, but I can read it out loud about how maybe we'll end up in a point where AI and like deep learning, and by listening to all of the pieces, because that's right now how they're creating music through AI is with deep learning, which listens to as many songs as you can possibly give a computer, and then from there it'll produce its own version of the song by taking bits and pieces. So maybe if you give it songs with human error, which is like an art form within itself, like playing the wrong note, maybe it'll end up producing songs that also have human error with it. Like there's no limit to AI, which is super scary to me. And that's like a large reason why I decided to be a part of it, is because then maybe I can have some say in where it goes and my limits within it. But on that note, I do have tennis practice, so I am gonna dip out. But this was awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
joining
Stephanie.
us, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to be conscious of everyone's time. I know it's 3:05 and we are now knee deep in the philosophical jelly or whatever you want to call it. I think at this stage I just say thank you everyone for being here. It has been wonderful to see all of you. It's been wonderful to hear all your perspectives, and I hope you enjoyed yourself at this Serious Talks for Silly People. I'm sorry that Wesley didn't make an appearance. He bothers me any other time that I'm on the computer. You'd think that he would pick the time where he's featured, but with that, thank you all. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.